Welcome to the Working Enneagram YouTube channel, where we talk about the Enneagram in the context of work. I am your host, Kelsey Taylor, and today on the show, we have the very wise and wonderful Kristi Rowles. She is the founder of the Enneagram University and an Enneagram Type 6, and I'm so excited to have you on the show, Kristi. Thank you for joining
Thanks
today.
for having me. We'll have a great conversation.
We really will. I know that we will. From our previous, before we started recording conversation, we are going to have a great time together. Okay, we are talking all things communication and how each Enneagram type, their talk style, as you would say, how they communicate in the workplace, what that looks like, why they should care. And I think our hope at the Working Enneagram is that you would walk away learning something about yourself that you didn't know before, or something about another type that you didn't know before. So I'm excited to see where you're going to take us through that. But before we jump into all the meat and potatoes, tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do for work.
Yeah, so I am Kristi. I was born and raised in Florida in the States, but I currently am traveling to South America, and I've been living in Ecuador off and on for the last 2 years. So I'm on a mission, I was sharing with Kelsey, to learn Spanish, which has been a fun hobby, but feels like a second full-time job. So that's fun. And then, I founded Enneagram University in 2020. So we train and certified Enneagram coaches and leaders all across the world. We have coaches everywhere, and it's really fun. So we work with a lot of companies, and we say that we help humanize the workplace. And essentially, we want to support people in the work that they do. We want to help organizations and leaders care more effectively for their people, invest in their people, and see them as full humans who bring the fullness of who they are to the workplace, not just productivity machines to pump out the goals of the company, and how that builds loyalty and happiness and commitment to the team and commitment to the common vision and less conflict and so many things. So the Enneagram is so powerful in every setting where humans exist, but in the workplace, there's a lot of power as well. So we work with teams, and then we also, work with HR managers, L&D leaders, and it's really fun work.
I love it. I love it. I can attest. I do something very similar, and I can attest that it's fun work. It's really neat to watch people say, oh, that's why I do what I do. Or that's why you do what you do, and have a little bit more empathy for the differences in each personality.
And it's
a lot of fun.
And it's fun too. Like we train a lot of people who work in companies where we may not go in and actually do the work, but we train and certify them in the Enneagram to be able to facilitate it for their workplaces. And it's just cool to hear the trickle down effects of it being integrated and how it changes team culture, how it builds trust, how it smooths communication, which we'll be talking about today. And it just gives you more insight for example, that colleague doesn't annoy you on purpose. Usually, sometimes they might be, but for the most part, they're probably just functioning the way that they do, and it's different than the way that you function. And so how can you understand them? How can they understand you, so that you can work more effectively together and accomplish the common goals, but do it in a way that honors the fullness of each other and is more fun?
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautifully said. I love that. I want to go back to Ecuador. What made you pick Ecuador? Why there?
Yeah, so I love Latin American culture. I've spent a good bit of time in Central America, Mexico, and I lived in Guatemala for a few months back in 2022. And so I hadn't really explored South America yet. So chose Ecuador, just went for it, found a beach town. Like being from Florida, I love the ocean. And so I found a beach town and settled there for 6 months. And then the next year I settled in a different beach town, and now I'm in the mountains. So it's a different experience, and it's kind of a wild life.
Absolutely.
And we talked about this a little bit too, but as a 6, sometimes my life choices, I'm like, what am I doing? It's exciting. My 7 wing is excited, but my 6ness is like, what are you doing? This is a little bananas. So,
fun.
So I don't know that Ecuador will be like where I settle. I could see myself settling in Mexico. I've really, really loved Mexico and Mexican history and culture, but we'll see. So right now I'm like, let me stay in one place, learn Spanish with one accent, because everyone in South America has a different accent. Every country, there's different terminology and words. And I'm like, I just need to grasp most of it so I can make my way through, and then I'll start exploring more. And so Ecuador for now.
I love it. Okay, random question. Do you have a favorite Spanish word?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So there's this thing in Spanish where they add an ito or an ita to the end of words. So for example, señora is an older woman. Señorita is a little cute woman, right? And so, but you can do it for everything. So for example, I have a dog, his name is Milo, he's precious. And a male dog is called a perro, but you can call it perrito. Perrito, it's just a little cute dog. And it's so sweet. And so, yeah, there's a lot of words like for example, a bag. If I'm at a grocery and I need to get a bag, there's a fonda, right? You can get a fundita, a little, it's just like, I'll just take a little bag, right? They're not necessarily meaning like it's little and cute, literally, but like just a little bag, a little fundita. It's just
That's adorable.
so cute. I'm like, this is
I
adorable.
love that so much.
Yeah, so
it is cute.
It's really cute.
Okay. That is so funny that you say that, because one of my favorite Spanish words is pobrecita. Pobrecito.
Okay, I don't know that word.
Poor baby. Poor little baby.
Poor little baby.
Yeah, poor little baby. So
that's cute.
That was what my Spanish teacher in high school would call me when I would get things wrong. Oh, pobrecita.
That's funny. Like, you know, people will say to their kids or their partners or people like, hola, mi amor, like, hi, my love. But you can say, mi amorcito, my little love. It's just so stinking adorable. I'm like, I just want to pinch all their cheeks, but obviously I don't. But it's so like warm, and there's so much hospitality in Spanish culture that I treasure. So it's really lovely.
That's good. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for indulging my random question. I love that. Okay. You're an Enneagram 6.
Yes.
How do you know beyond the shadow of a doubt that you are an Enneagram 6?
So years ago, I was in grad school to become a mental health therapist, and I was also in therapy as a client. And we had my therapist and I, she was amazing. Her name was Hope. We worked together for a couple of years, and she was like, I feel like we're pretty much done. Like, we've talked about a lot of stuff in the past. Like, you seem pretty grounded. Like, I think we can transition out. And I remember saying to her, I'm scared. That was just the feeling I remember in my whole body, and thinking, I don't know why, but like, I still have anxiety. And so I'm not done yet. Like, I'm only going to be done when I don't have any anxiety anymore. So she said, I think maybe it would be helpful to look into the Enneagram. And I have done a lot. I mean, being a psych major and becoming a therapist, I've always loved all the things. So I've done a lot of personality assessments, and they've all served a purpose. And I've found maybe some value in them to have language for what it's like to be me. But I just kind of assumed this would be another one. And so I didn't follow up on that at all for probably like a month. And she's like, I'm not giving up on this. Like, you need to do this. We need to talk about it. So I wound up listening to a long podcast, and I was in the car by myself. And I think I had the experience that a lot of folks have when they first find their type, where it's like, oh my God. I felt like, I remember vividly turning around, like, is there anyone else in the car? I knew that I was in the car by myself, but I don't know, the level of vulnerability I felt when they were describing the 6 was, I don't know how to put it into words. It was wild, because I think I only live in my head just like you only live in your head, just like whoever's listening to this, they only live in their head, right? So we don't know what it's like to be in someone else's head. And we assume that even though we know we have differences, that we pretty much all think, process, value the same things. And it's just not the case.
Right.
So as I was listening to the podcast, I connected with different parts of, all the types, like 1 through 5. And then when it got to 6, I was like, oh my gosh, to my core. And it was fascinating, because this is a little bit more advanced for any Enneagram folks out there. If you're in the beginning, ignore what I'm about to say, but there's a part of the 6 called a counterphobic 6. The subtype that I am for the 6 looks a lot like an 8 on the outside at times. And so people in my life had been saying, I think you're an 8 if you feel very 8-ish to me, but I know what it feels like on the inside. And that's the difference of someone, even people who know me very well, saying, this is how I experience you. Okay. But what's driving me and how I actually feel internally is unfortunately not as confident as a type 8. And so for me, I think it was a deep moment of acceptance, where I had to realize, yes, my goal was rid myself of anxiety, which anxiety is a normal human emotion. 6s, unfortunately, we just got a little bit more of it traditionally, and tend to be the most anxious type, which is sad. But I think at first it felt like a life sentence to anxiety, which made me shut down and feel panicked. And over time, I really worked with my therapist to kind of figure out, how do I befriend my anxiety and learn how to live with her in a way that I hear her when she speaks, and I can also say to her, thank you for letting me know. Thanks for trying to protect me. I'm actually okay.
Mm-hmm.
So then it
Yeah.
totally shifted how I related to myself and how I understood this part of myself that I had traditionally really hated.
Yeah.
The Enneagram gave me a path towards self-love in a way that I hadn't found before in any other tool. So I think that's why I'm so committed to it and find it to be so impactful, because I'm just one of many, many
Mm-hmm.
stories of people feeling similar.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah.
I love that so much. I love that so much. I have an Enneagram 6 friend named Beth, and I was going through something, and I had not really struggled with a lot of anxiety up until this moment of my life. And I was telling her, here's what I think I should do. And she just said, "Oh, have you ever just sat with your anxiety?" And I remember looking at her like, "What?
No.
Why would I ever do that?"
I'd prefer not to.
And exactly, exactly. I very similarly thought, okay, anxiety is wrong. I've got to overcome this. Normal human emotion. I love that you said that. And I think what sixes offer us is the ability to sit with it, because you do have it all the time. And befriending it is such a beautiful way to look at it, to say, thank you. I think I'm okay. I'm
Yeah.
actually okay. That's so well said. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it took years, right? So it's easy to say now, but like the process is messy and it's complicated to learn to be kind to yourself. But I think for all of us, we all
Mm-hmm.
have that kind of what we would call shadow side, right? These parts of our
Mm-hmm.
type that aren't our favorite, that have been the source of pain in our life, or relationship pain in our life, or work pain in our life. And learning how to say, man, even if I don't love this, it is a part of me. So how do I learn how to live with this and support myself through it, rather than try to eradicate
Mm-hmm.
it from myself, because I'm probably not gonna, and then I'm just gonna hate who I am because I feel like there's something wrong that I can't overcome it. So instead, like, can we just wrap ourselves in a warm blanket of empathy and connection and yeah, trying to figure it out, So and,
Yeah.
I said anxiety is an emotion that all 9 types feel. And when we think about our core motivations, what drives the anxiety for each type is different based on that type's core motivation.
Mm-hmm.
But for sixes, there
Yes.
is this kind of always kind of bubbling under the surface anxiety. And I saw a meme once and I sent it to my mom. She's actually a type 2, but she raised 2 sixes. So I think it must be in her blood somewhere.
Amazing.
It's a lot of anxiety in my house, but growing up. But I sent a meme to her that said, "Anxiety, get ready. Me for what? I don't know. Just get ready." That is life. Like, that is how it feels sometimes. It feels like there's no logical reason. It's just there, and there's a subconscious, yeah, fear. And so learning how to
Mm-hmm.
proactively self-soothe and have safe relationships and do yoga or meditation
Mm-hmm.
or prayer, whatever works that grounds you, is so
Right.
important for all of us, but especially sixes.
Yeah. I want to go back to what you said about counterphobic
Mm-hmm.
sixes. I think even if you're new to the Enneagram, this is so helpful because there is the phobic six that kind of leans away from fear, and that counterphobic six that kind of moves toward fear, which does make them look like an eight. And so I see a lot of sixes mistype as eights for that very reason. People tell them, I think you might be an eight. And because they outsource their thinking, they're like, sure, if you think I'm an eight, then I could see that. So tell me a little bit more about how that counterphobic six can tell the difference between them and an eight.
Yeah, great question. So, yeah, our phobic sixes, and I will say for anybody, these, what we're referring to, are like instinctual variants, or more commonly known as subtypes. For some reason, sixes
Mm-hmm.
have these other nicknames where we call the self preservation subtype phobic, and the sexual one to one intimate. There's a lot of different names for that other subtype,
Mm-hmm.
counterphobic. So, I don't know why we have those different names, but we do. And maybe there is such a stark difference. So, phobic sixes tend to look a lot like twos, counterphobic tend to look a lot like eights. So, the vastness of what a six can present on the outside is kind of wild. So we kind of do sometimes float between being super accommodating, super go with the flow, super trusting, super others focused, and then have that eight energy where it's like, I don't actually trust any of you. And now I feel like you're trying to pull one over on me in some sort of way. And it just kind of gets
Yeah.
more, we get more aggressive. So sometimes the way I teach it is like, counterphobic sixes tend to get small in fear and think, if I just
Mm-hmm.
comply, the threat won't hurt me. Counterphobic sixes tend to be like, you don't scare me, even though like we are actually scared. But we feel like in some subconscious way, if I'm intimidating enough, I'll scare the scary thing away. And so, yeah, there's a difference, I think, when you're looking at counterphobic sixes and when you're looking at eights. It is more common for counterphobic sixes to mistype as eights. I've never met a single one of them who is mistyped as a six. Like, it's just not the same, right? Eights have a level of confidence and self-assurance that sixes tend to struggle to have. Even if we're like, no, I'm self-assured. It's almost like, yeah, I am. Am I? Right? There's that little hesitancy or that little bit of doubt that's like, I'm strong and powerful. Am I? What if I'm not? What if I can't always be? Right? Where eights are like, I'm a powerful person and nobody is going to take that away from me. And one of my closest friends years ago is an eight, and she's like, I just don't get why people care what people think about them. And this is pre-Enneagram. And I was like, I don't know, girl, but I'm just telling you that we do. The rest of us do be caring. So for sixes, we care a lot, not because we need to be seen in a certain image, what's common for threes, for example, or whatever. But it's like, I care what they think because relationships are part of how I feel secure and safe in the world. And so I need to keep a base on that. I also feel very loyal and protective of my people. So I need to stay connected to them so that we're both protected, kind of going back and forth, and we're both staying safe. Whereas an eight is like, I don't need anything from you. I don't need anything from anybody.
Yeah.
Under the surface, eights are so tender, and their closest people will see those sides of them where they long to be vulnerable and have those safe spaces where they don't have to be the tough person. So that is still very much a part of the eights. I don't want to be like, they're just these tough people, because they're very squishy, and deeply loving, but they know who their people are. And outside of that, they do not care at all what people think about them. So those are some big differentiators. Eights don't often feel anxious. They're almost so go for it. They tend to be more impulsive or more driven, more confident, more like, I know what I think and feel and want, and I'm going to go for it. Whereas sixes are like, I'm trying to figure out what I think because I'm thinking a lot of things and they seem to kind of conflict with each other, and I'm trying to make sense of them. And we tend to take a lot more time to make choices because it's almost impossible for us sometimes to feel confident, like we're making the right choice, because there's so many alternatives and options and pros and cons to all of them. Whereas eights tend to just go for it, for better or worse.
Yes, that's beautiful. So the self-doubt of the six is a big tell. The confidence of an eight is a big tell. And the I do care what people think about me for the six is a tell. And the I don't really care what people think about me for the eight. That's great.
And
That's
the like
well said.
reactive go-getter, like that, eights are in what we call the doing or the body triad. They're very fast action takers. And sixes, we just sort of meander around and hope we get clarity here sooner or later. I mean, I've run a business for a long time. I make a lot of decisions, but like, I'm exhausted of all the decisions I make. And eights generally have so much more energy and capacity and assurance. And I envy that at times. I wish I was an eight to have that. But I've also come to love a lot about being a six. And that took me a long time. But these days, I'm grateful.
Yay. I love that. That's sweet. Okay. Shall we jump in with our communication styles, each the types? I'm going to start with one because I like the chronological order of that.
Me too.
Okay. So the communication style for the one has been described as very accurate, precise, and sometimes judgmental or critical. Would you agree with these? Would you change them? What do you think?
Yeah. So I see the type one talk style, right? Like the word that we often use is teaching. Ones tend to have similar to an eight, and so in that sort of confidence, that assurance of what's right and wrong. And obviously you can speak to this a lot as a one, so I'll just speak in general, and then you can say what connects with you and what doesn't. But that desire to teach, that desire to lead, partially because they love leading and they want to do what's great for people, and they have the capacity to, but also because they often think that they're right, and they assume that their version of what's right is what's right for everyone. So a lot of times ones, they do speak very pointedly, right? Like ones are very particular people. They're very detailed oriented people. They want to make sure that they're speaking with clarity. They tend to be very logical thinkers, very structured. It's very, how do we make this better in what we're doing? How do we improve this? They do tend to be direct speakers. I mean, I think that especially female ones who kind of have that female culture of, the expectation of us being soft and gentle, right? We're a little softer, whereas male ones can be a little bit more direct and aggressive. And female ones we still feel like a responsibility, or I should say I'm not a one, they feel a responsibility to soften it a little bit, but it's still very direct. It's still very like, here's what I'm trying to say, and I'm not going to beat around the bush. That's one, wasted time, and two, like, I know what it is, and this is what it is, so it's very, very clear in that way.
Yes.
Ones tend to be usually very well intended. I'm really, I have very high standards. I have rules that I follow, and I think that they are best for people. So I want to lead in that way and kind of set that example, that moral and ethical responsibility to share what's right and to lead in a way that's ethical and aligned with their integrity. So sometimes for less healthy ones, this can shift into be a little bit, like you said, more critical. Sometimes it feels more like they're speaking, or they're giving like a sermon or a lecture of like, this is the right way. And sometimes it can come with an ounce of, let me just pause real quick. Kelsey and I talked about this before, but as we talk about each of the types, there's going to be parts when I talk about your type, including my own, where I'm like, oh God, this is gross and I don't love this and I wish it wasn't true. So just know I'm not hating on any type. There's beautiful things and hard parts about all of them. So that said,
we'll try to equally offend every single person.
Exactly. Right. Like, we'll hold you and love you, but we also will offend you just a little bit. And I will also offend myself. So like, I'm in it with you. So yeah, there is sometimes on the unhealthy side, the directness can be very critical. It can be insensitive. It can be, I don't know that I would go as far as cruel, but at times it can be cruel. And very pointed. There's this idea of, I know what's best, you must follow me, and if you don't, you're wrong. That kind of undertone of like superiority, or anything less than what I'm saying is wrong and should be ignored, and my way is the way. So oftentimes that's how ones show up in communication.
Yeah, absolutely. I resonate with that so much. There was a time before I knew the Enneagram where I would just tell people how to live their lives. And I thought that people should be so grateful for
Totally. Here's my bank account. Like, send me 20 over to my Venmo. Yeah.
Exactly. I will bill for my hours.
Exactly.
100%.
Even if you didn't ask for it, I'm giving it anyway.
Yeah, as it turns out, people don't like you to tell them how to live their lives. So there's that. Yes. And I do think you hit the nail on the head with the female ones being a little softer. We're still direct by all means, but there's definitely times where if I'm giving feedback, I'll use the sandwich method and I'll say something positive, be the direct feedback, and then end with something positive.
Which is
and
beautiful.
I think Enneagram has
Love that idea.
helped me.
You know?
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to our twos, the helpers. So they're go for it.
Go ahead. You start, because you have some good like starting points for them.
Okay. Our twos typically, communication-wise, they're described as being supportive, being helpful, being encouraging, but sometimes being overly personal or overbearing. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's actually, so I'll start with maybe one of their not best qualities first, actually, because it flows right with what we were just talking about for the one, where twos long to be helpful so much that they can assert themselves. The feedback or the help tends to be softer than the directness with the type one, but it's still like the undertone and the subconscious is, I know what's good for you and I'm going to give it to you whether you asked or not. And that can be loving if the relationship is safe enough and you have the consent to do that with that person. It can also be overbearing and controlling and invasive, especially for people who are more reserved or don't feel ready for your feedback and aren't looking for advice. They just want you to be with them or be a safe space or be a sounding board, not to necessarily tell them what to do. So the talk style for the two we call advising. So this is, again, rooted in that idea of, I want to be needed and valued in relationships. And so I can kind of garner that assurance if I make myself invaluable by helping. So the talk style, again, it's not teaching like we talked about for the one, it's advising. It's a softer way of telling people what to do. So the question a lot of times for twos, and the intention is, how can I be helpful here? It's not this conscious, like, how can I make them need me? Let me tell them what to do. It truly is this desire of, I long to support people. I long to be there for people. I long to be a safe place for them and to help them. And because I believe that I know what can be helpful for them, I'm going to share it. So it comes from a really beautiful place. So the dark side of that sometimes is, especially, when support shifts over to like flattery, or it's a little manipulative, or it's like, let me tell you what you want to hear, where it's maybe less helpful, and less necessarily even what's good for that person. Sometimes when a two feels rejected in their advising, they can get a little bit more aggressive, right? So we know that twos and stress kind of look like a type 8. They kind of move that way. And so they can get a little bit more dominating, which is confusing for other people around them, because wait a second, I thought you were just this soft, really nurturing, loving, squishy person, and now you're being like kind of aggressive and in my face about it. And it sometimes can confuse twos too. And then traditionally they tend to feel guilt about that afterward. But yeah, in general, I will say, especially in the workplace, twos love connection. Like it just feels like that's what life is about. So twos love to genuinely hear, like, how are you? Tell me about yourself. Like, how was your weekend? How are the kids? That is so genuine for twos. Twos are very warm. They're deeply empathetic people, and they are driven by relationships. So, just keeping in mind that sometimes they might cross over, and it's appropriate to say, hey, I'm not actually asking for feedback right now. Can you just sit with me? And a lot of times, twos, especially if they're a little bit more secure in who they are, they're like, oh, yes, of course, I'll just sit with you. But do know that they care deeply about other people, and it is the primary fixation really of their existence is connecting, caring for people, and helping however they feel like they can.
I love what you said about twos being so relational. I'm married to a two. I have seen this play out, both the beautiful side of communication for a two and the more difficult sides. The flattery, or I'm going to tell you what you want to hear. I have seen that with my husband when I come home and I'm frustrated with something or someone, and I'm just kind of sharing, here's how my day was, here's what I'm frustrated about. And he's like, do you want me to go beat them up for you? Or he's like, yeah, this person totally sucks. And I'm like, no, they don't suck. I'm just frustrated with them.
Totally.
So there's definitely a, like, I'm going to take your side element to twos that I think you hit the nail on the head for sure.
Yeah, they're protective of their people too, like a lot of types, their people are everything. So
absolutely. And the healthy side, I love that you said this, because I've seen this with my husband. If I do come home and I am frustrated, he has started sitting there and saying, do you want my advice, or do you want to just talk? And I'm like, oh,
10
that's
out of
so
10.
nice.
A+.
I just want to talk, actually. Yes. Yeah. Well done, Ben.
Yeah.
Well done.
For sure.
Okay, let's talk about threes then. Threes communication style has been described as very efficient, sometimes self-promoting, sometimes confident. So what would you add?
Yeah. Threes, I think I'm fascinated with every type, I think, because this is just what I do and love. But threes are really interesting, where we talked about twos kind of going from that soft squishiness to like this kind of aggressive version. Threes often get painted as like so confident. They can even present as arrogant, which is accurate for threes. They absolutely can present as arrogant. But underneath that for them too, there is this fear of being found out. There's this idea of like, man, I have to keep showing up and presenting this successful way. I have to make sure I'm valuable to people around me. And it feeds this kind of monster inside that's like, am I valuable enough? Do people really care? Am I accomplishing what I should? And so threes have a lot of work to do around learning how to nurture that themselves and redefining what success is. Success maybe is authenticity by chance. Success is maybe being connected to the people you love, not necessarily that kind of ego driven. And by the way, when I use the word ego, I mean just our personality structure. So like all of our types are our egos. So three is kind of being that ego driven, like I have to perform, be very goal oriented, redefining what that is. But anyway, in terms of communication, threes do tend to be very direct as well. They tend to be a little softer sometimes. They might be one vibes or a little bit softer, especially depending on who they're talking to. Especially if that person is somebody that they want to see them as admirable, they will soften and present whatever they want to say in a way that is most likely to get the results that they want, which includes them being respected, them being seen as important and bringing stuff to the table. So in terms of them in leadership, for example, threes tend to be quite direct. They tend to be very like, please don't waste my time writing me a long email. Like just,
Yes.
I will say one thing in South America, if you walk into a place, it's like, there's often that, hey, how are you? How's your day? How can I help you? And it's so much like initial or like, hey, good morning, right? There's so many greetings before you get to what you're trying to say. Whereas traditionally American culture is like, hey, I'm looking for this email.
Yes.
Which is also
Yes.
very three, right? It's like, we can connect, but I'm here for business. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's get to the point. Let's not waste time here. Like, can we just be direct? Like, get to what we're trying to say. Threes tend to have enthusiasm. They tend to be energetic. They want conversations to be strategic. So it's not just, threes don't often know what to do with just like social situations that don't have a purpose or when they're not in a role. Like if they're just hanging out with friends, sometimes it can be like, what am I doing here? Right? Like who do I have to impress or what's the point here? Right? And so that can be a little awkward for them too, depending on, again, where they are with health as well and how much vulnerability they've learned to allow themselves. And so, when it comes to the workplace, threes do tend to be very leadership style, very driven, very clear. You had mentioned, I forget the word you used. What's the word you used for kind of self-promotion, did you say?
I did self-promoting. Yeah, that's
very accurate for threes, right? Because their ego is kind of driven by how do I woo people to like me and love me? Like the talk style we say for threes is wooing. It's how do I persuade people to see me in the way that I want to be seen, but also accomplish things that I want us to accomplish as a team. How do I motivate our whole team to get behind this mission? How do I woo people to kind of go along with what I want? And so sometimes that's to feed the monster of like, I'm okay, right? And sometimes it's because I genuinely have a great vision and I'm an incredible leader and I can inspire people. And I believe in the potential and the power of this group of people. And so again, it's for all of us, like our beautiful things can also be our most unpleasant parts. And so it's always navigating that. But so there's some ways that threes tend to communicate relationally in and outside of the workplace.
For sure. That's great. Would you say that vulnerability or authenticity for a three sometimes looks like them admitting that they don't know or don't have the answer?
I wish they would do that more often. But
Absolutely.
I will say three's ability to strategize and problem solve and find a way forward is wild. And I sometimes don't think that threes get enough credit for that. Like they can see a problem and they're like, oh, here's a solution. I mean, they are incredibly fast thinkers, problems like very efficient in terms of solving problems. They can envision something big, but then also see the minute details that need to get done and then execute those details. Like their scope of capacity is truly, it is admirable. It is.
Yes. I couldn't think of a better word. Admirable is spot on.
Which is how they want to be seen. And I'm like, I do want to admire you, but I don't want you to be fed by me admiring. Like I want you to be secure, even if I don't admire you, but I do admire you because you're impressive. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yes. Okay. Let's do type fours then. Our romantics or individualists, if you will. Their communication style has sometimes been described as very intense, expressive, authentic, sometimes dramatic. I am interested to hear what you say about dramatic, if that resonates at all for the four in your mind. So tell me a little bit more.
Yeah, here's the thing. I think that, again, this depends on the health of the four, right? An unhealthy four might create drama just because that, I don't know, is exciting, right? Like, I mean, or brings their life, it brings something, I don't know, energy to their life or something, right? But traditionally, when we use the word dramatic with fours, what it is they just feel really deeply. So for other people experience them often as dramatic or over the top or overly sensitive or whatever it may be. But it's not often that they're trying to create drama. I will say there is a little bit of gaminess sometimes with fours where it's like, let me just dangle a little something and then see if you pursue me a little bit. So, for example, there's a four I worked with years ago. She was a colleague. And when we first started integrating the Enneagram into our workplace, one of the examples I used that was that fours will sometimes kind of like separate from the group at a work gathering, for example, or a family gathering or whatever, and then see like, will anyone come and seek me out? And she was like, oh my God, I'm
Yes.
embarrassed. I do that. Like that doesn't sound good when you say it like that. So, fours, there's some work to do around like speaking for your needs and going and actively communicating with people, not trying to like manipulatively woo people into your corner to kind of hunt
Yes.
you out. So yeah, there's a little bit of that. But in general, fours are the most sensitive type on the Enneagram. They are deep wells of
Mhm.
empathy. And you will, for me, when I'm feeling the biggest of my emotions, I'm like, the safest place to be is with the four. Like, I will be held. I will not be told that I'm too much. And it is really
Yes.
precious. And no other type can sit with pain and discomfort like a four can. So that's really precious. Of course, the flip side of that is it can sometimes be a prolonged amount of sitting with the negative feelings, a prolonged amount of sitting with
Right.
the melancholy is a word that you'll hear a lot with fours, the kind of sorrow, the sort of envy or the longing for something, right? It kind of feels like there's something just missing from who I am. And so I'm trying to kind of find that or hunt that out. So a lot of times in communication, you'll experience that confusion or that hesitancy or that sense of like, no one understands me a little bit with fours. And it's like, right, there's a push and pull. You want people to understand you deeply so that you belong, but you also don't want to be so
Right.
understood that you feel like you're not unique and that somebody understands you completely, because that kind of freaks them out, right? So sometimes fours, their communication can be emotional. It can be what other people perceive as negative, or the word that we use for the talk style of the four is lamenting, kind of fixated on um, the sorrow around them in their own life or in the world around them. And while in one way that's beautiful, it can drive you to advocacy and lots of great things, it also can keep you very stuck and it can keep you very ruminating rather than taking action forward. Fours are very in tune with their own world, their own experience, and sometimes that can be such an extreme that they lack consideration or awareness for other people's emotional experiences subconsciously because their world feels so all consuming to them. Fours also tend to love storytelling and sharing things in a way that is deep, right? Poetry, writing songs, like fours get pegged as like the artists. Lots of types can be artists, right? For different reasons. But fours make really beautiful, incredible artists because they feel so deeply and they're able to express what it's like to be a human in a way that a lot of other types don't. So in the workplace, in the United States at least, that is not, that entire thing I just described is not traditionally a profile that companies are like, let's hire you and reward you for being emotionally sensitive, a safe place for the team,
Right.
reminding us of each other's humanity, and blah, 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 blah. Right. A lot of workplaces are like, do your job and like, do what I tell you. And so I resent that for fours because they deserve to be deeply valued. But
Mm.
they are not they're not going to be the people who are super quick on their feet, who make decisions quickly, who, like knock out a bunch of tasks super fast. That it's just not who they are. It's just not even something that they really value. So, learning
Right.
to respect that and find a purpose for them in the workplace and a purpose that fulfills them and where they feel like they can give back meaningfully in a way that the team values is important.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Very well said. I have had somebody explain fours to me this way, and this is a subtype reference that there is the sad four, the mad four, and the glad four.
Mm.
And so I have a friend who I'm thinking of, Lilia, who is a four on the Enneagram. And for the longest time, I thought she was a seven just because
Yeah.
her speaking style didn't quite match that melancholy. It was very positive and very enthusiastic. And I am curious to hear from you on that mad, sad, glad. Have you heard
Yeah.
that before? And have you seen that change a little bit in their speaking styles also?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the other thing too is we talk about fours being like dark and moody and emotional, right? But being emotional also means that regardless of what the emotion is, they feel it strongly. As strongly as they feel sorrow or grief, they also feel joy and love that strongly. And so, absolutely, all of them are there. I think that fours generally feel right content with the depth of feelings that they have about all the things.
Yes.
Other people often
Yes.
feel frustrated, or they don't understand, or whatever, about the negative sides. But of course, the positive sides are well to be celebrated. And so it's just not all valued the same. And that feels really unfair. But yeah, for any emotion that they feel, it's big because they care deeply
Yes.
and they feel deeply.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's so good. Thank you. I love it. Okay, let's talk fives. Fives are our investigators, our observers, and their communication style has been described as analytical, very thoughtful, sometimes aloof, and depending on what they know, it can be very long or it could be very short. So tell me about that.
Yeah, for sure. Fives are super fun and interesting to me because I think that I don't I don't function as much. I overthink as a six, just like fives, but they seem so grounded. And I'm like, tell me your secrets, um, because the way that they present in the world, the way that they communicate is often very well informed. It's very intellectual. It's very well thought through before they say it out of their mouth, which is not something that a lot of other types can say. Fives are very focused on rationale and reasoning and logic over emotions. And so that's why fives and fours need each other, but it's also where they can bump heads because they come from different lenses. And that doesn't mean fives also can feel and fours can also think. We're not saying that they're incapable of the others. It's just the differentiator of where they kind of lean naturally. So fives don't tend to really talk much. It's kind of like, I want to say something valuable, or like, what's the point of talking? They don't long traditionally for the amount of social connection that a lot of other types have. Like when we talk about twos and their relationships are the point of being alive for them in a lot of ways. For fives, it's like, no, I could be happy like living in a cabin in the woods by myself and like seeing a human once a year. Do I think they need more connection than once a year? 100%. But that contentment with being independent is really important for fives. Fives feeling self-sufficient is really important. So they do care about people, but their communication style, the way that they show up, is different than a lot of other types. So fives can kind of present a little bit like ones in the way that they can teach as well. So we call their talk style explanation, but I think teaching works somewhat for them as well. There is so much that goes into the reasoning and rationale of a five. So for example, I met a new friend this last week, and it was my friend's husband, and he helps teach people how to build computers. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Like my brain just went,
Right.
but he could talk about it so detailed and like in the nitty gritty. And he was like, listen to, I don't know, it was just like wild. I'm like, I can't even think that small. Like minute little details are systemically how things function, how they work. And so it can feel similar to ones at time, like an elongated lecture, or like an elongated, not a lecture as in for the ones, it can feel like superiority. I'm telling you what to do. For fives, it's like, I'm going to explain this to you. And it's going to take a lot of time. And so sometimes other people can feel like, wait, what are we even talking about? Or like, you lost me 10 minutes ago because honestly, you're so smart and you know that so well. And I don't know how to follow you there. It's too complex for other people's minds. So sometimes I think that's why fives get people say they're aloof. Sometimes it's that social awareness of like, you lost people 10 minutes ago kind of thing, where it's like, oh, they're just so happy and like love that. When I think about the brain of a six or five, I think like it's that analogy or that imagery of like gears turning. Like that's how the brains are. And it's like, tick, 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 and they're just jiving. And so, yeah, it tends to be very intellectual and systematic and clear and reserved until they have something to say. And so a lot of times fives, they kind of sway back and forth too between, I don't know enough about this, like I'm not qualified to speak, or I need to learn more, study more, build more confidence, whatever. Like I shouldn't be the trusted voice on this, but I'm like, you're literally smarter than 99% of the rest of us on this. Like
Right.
we know nothing. So what you know is so much more than what we know. So that's one part. But on the other hand, that, shifting from the insecurity part and I don't know enough, sometimes it can also be very like confident and knowing this is my area of specialty and I'm kind of brilliant, and I love that confidence when a five gets there.
So I'm thinking of my father-in-law, who is a 5, and when he has something to say, it is always with the intent to add value. He knows his Bible more than most, and so when we sit down at the dinner table and we share our highs and lows, or we're sharing what's going on that day, he almost always has this valuable tidbit of, here's what I learned today. And I love that you have that talk style of teaching, because I do see that so much with what he does, and adds value every single time. So that's
And
good.
when we
Thank
talk
you.
about fives not being that emotional, that is one way that they express love. Teaching is sharing their
Mm-hmm.
knowledge. So I just want to say, like, when
Yes.
we say they're super intellectual, yeah, they also have deep feelings. And the way that they express love is
Yes.
through their intellectualism and, their knowledge. And so, yeah, just it's important to acknowledge that love looks different to all the types, and care looks different, and respect looks different. And yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's well said. Okay, let's talk about your type sixes. Communication style has sometimes been described as very thoughtful. I think very prepared. Sometimes there's superfluous context. I'd be interested to hear what you have to say about that. I think maybe some self doubt is sometimes what I hear their communication style described as. So, what you got?
Yeah. We're just an interesting breed at times. Like, I think that I exhaust myself a lot. And part of that is like when we call our talk style questioning, like we just question all the
Mhm.
things. And that is quite draining mentally for us. So we said fives are super logical, sixes and sevens, all of us are in what we call the head triad, right? We are all thinkers, overthinkers, just in different ways how it shows up. And so for sixes, it is that, sometimes if people may have heard this, but we talk about sixes like having it's almost like a conference room in our brain. Or if you've seen the movie
Mhm.
Inside Out, feels so similar, where you have all these different
Yeah.
perspectives who are saying, well, if you do this, then that, if you do this, then that, right? Here's the outcome, here's the pros, here's the cons. And it's debilitating
Mhm.
at times to then make a decision and move forward. So a lot of times when we're in conversation, we ask a lot of questions. We're trying to gather as much information as we can, because we feel in a way like, if I know it all, then I can assess it all, and therefore I can make a decision that I'll trust.
Right.
Unfortunately for us, it's almost impossible to make a decision for us that we feel 100% sure about. And that makes me sad, and it's frustrated because it's like, God, what I would give to just be like, that's the right decision. I'm making it and I'm moving on with my life. And it
Mhm.
doesn't often feel that way. There's a level of insecurity with sixes, and a level of, I don't really know what I'm doing, and hesitation and doubt and fear. And so we tend to rely on a lot of other people, and we ask for advice like, hey, what do you think about this? Or, hey, can you process this with me? And a lot of times, I tend to be somebody, and a lot of sixes will take all of that, and then we're digesting it. And then we're figuring out what works for us, right? So we may or may not listen, but you processing with me is really helpful, because it helps me make sense of what's happening in my brain.
Yes.
So that sort of like looking outside of ourselves for guidance is a core part of sixes. So yeah, and we are detailed oriented, just like seven, or just like ones, where we tend to be great task doers, like threes as well. Ones, threes, and sixes. We tend to be list people, and a lot of people like lists, but like we just love it. Check them off,
Yes.
accomplish it. It helps. Whereas a three, it might feel successful. One, make sure they're doing all the right things. For sixes, it's like, okay, I'm feeling good that I'm fulfilling my responsibilities, right? There's always this different messaging under why we like that behavior of having a task.
Right.
So yeah, we generally sixes, because trust is so important, we care a lot about maintaining that for the people around us as well. So being a safe place for them is just as important as
Mhm.
having them be a safe place for us when we need it. So yeah, there's a few things about us.
Yeah. No, that's so good. I mentioned this to you before. My mom's a 6, and hearing you say that processing with her is helpful for me, because there are some times where she's talking to me and asking my advice, and I can tell. I'm like, Mom, you already know what you're going to do. You don't need my advice. But having that, I think, other perspective is part of her processing. And so I'm so thankful you said that.
Yeah.
That's
It's even
helpful.
like, if you tell me your perspective, I can feel that in my body if I'm connected to my intuition in a way. Like, it's like, oh, I like that. Yeah, I like that. Or like, ugh, I don't know why, but I don't like that. Right. And that helps me
Yeah.
feel more assured. And so sometimes
Yeah.
friends of sixes can be like, God, you're so annoying. Like, why even talk to me if you're not going to listen to like what I suggested? Or like, I put so much effort into like giving you advice and then you didn't even listen. And it's like, right. But what we're trying to do often is find ourselves. We're trying to find ourselves among the noise, and the noise is our own brains. And so you kind of
Mhm.
being a mirror for me in some ways helps me find myself. And that is really important for sixes because we tend to be so self-doubting that learning to trust ourselves and connect to our own guidance is one of probably the hardest and the most important parts of our life journey. Because it's very easy to just like follow the rules and meet other people's expectations. And then we
Yeah.
wake up 30 years later and we're like, oh my gosh, where have I been? So it's really important for us to connect to ourselves, but it's hard work for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I always have found it fascinating that sixes are self doubting because I think you are literally the most qualified person to make the decision. I truly do.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's so funny because sometimes I have to remind myself, for example, like even prepping for a podcast interview or teaching something at Enneagram University, I'm like, do I even know what I'm saying? And I have to remind myself, like, girl, you have run a business for all these years. You have all these great testimonials. You have a master's degree.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Yes.
You are so well prepared. So I try to remind myself, like, Kristi, when you're feeling like you're not prepared, you being ill prepared is still more prepared than most people's normal.
100%.
So I try to
Yes.
let that be there, like coach myself through it. But that fear of
Yeah.
like, I don't know what I'm doing and
Yeah.
is very real.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I love that. Thank you for your
Yeah, of
vulnerability and
course.
sharing. That's awesome. Remind me, what was the talk
So we
style
call it
that you have for
questioning. Yeah.
questioning?
Because
That's right.
that's
Okay.
that's what's happening in our brains all the time. It's what's happening with our relationships often.
Okay, let's move on to our sevens, then our enthusiasts. Sevens communication style has been described as very positive, very enthusiastic, sometimes a little scattered. So, what would you add to that?
Yes, 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 yes. All of the above. Very accurate. I think sevens, they're known for being like super energetic, right? So it's definitely how they communicate as well. It's motivational, it's optimistic, it's like rah, rah, we can do anything. And they really believe it. When the rest of us are like, I don't know, can we? They're like, we can. Come on, believe in yourself. There's so much power that sevens have to just inspire people. The threes have that too,
Mhm.
where it's just like, we can do this. Come on. So it's really fun. The hard part, I will say, for some people with sevens is there's almost so much of that sometimes, and there's not always as much of the follow up to like execute that vision or do their
For
part
sure.
in making that dream a reality. So that's relevant to mention. But their talk style specifically, it's very fast paced, it's engaging. They story tell too. We said that about fours. Fours story tell almost with like analogies or metaphors. It's more poetic. It's more like, let's connect to the heart of what we're talking about. Sevens are storytellers for the sake of being entertaining, right? Like I'm just bringing
Yes.
good vibes to this space. And I always like to say when I talk about sevens, like they are also deep, deep feelers and they do feel pain as well. They don't often feel like it's safe to express that or that people will accept that in them because they're so well known for being the fun, entertaining life of the party. And that is
Right.
a disservice that the rest of us do to them. So learning how to love our sevens and saying like your painful feelings, even though you don't want to feel them, if and when you ever want to, you're safe with me is really
Mhm.
important. So when I say like they're fun loving and they're fast paced talkers and all that, like they also have other sides too, right? That's just might be generally how they
Absolutely.
show up most of the time. So the talk style that the name that is often used for sevens is called anecdotes, which is basically just entertaining. Like, let me do something fun over here. Let me tell a fun story over here. Let me be sarcastic. Let's break the
Yes.
ice. Let's just have a tone of good energy, good vibes, and feeling like that will kind of
Yes.
carry us. They do well at like shifting conversations, right? If something gets too serious, they're like, well, blah, 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 blah. It's like, wait, we didn't finish that conversation. So like, come back.
Right. Right.
A lot of times when you think about ADHD, for example, to be clear, all
Mhm.
9 types can have ADHD as well as NT,
Yes.
any
Thank you for
mental
that.
health diagnosis, just to be
Yes.
clear. The therapist in me is like, what's that called? Like preface or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And so, but when you think about like a traditional cliche, like ADHD kid bouncing off the walls, like that is often what it feels like in the mind of a seven, and sometimes externally as well, where it's just like, we're over here, now we're over here, now we're over here, now we're over here. So learning to rein that in and stay focused is a skill that most sevens have to work on.
They have to hone
Yeah.
for sure, for sure.
Yep.
We think my youngest son, Rhett, is a 7. And what you said about changing and I can't shoot, I'm going to get it wrong. But what you said about changing it sporadically if things are not feeling good, they're like, oh, let's change directions here. Recently happened with him. We were in the car together, and my husband called. I have it on speakerphone. And he said, hey, Trent wants to do a sleepover with a friend. That's my oldest. So my youngest started crying because he hadn't really gotten to do anything fun. And so we ended the conversation. I start crying because he's crying. He looks at me and he said, are you okay? And I said, I'm sad because you're sad. He instantly changed and he said, you know what? I'm going to focus on the things that I do get to do. And he's an 8-year-old boy. And I like,
my heart.
so sweet. Yes, yes. But I do think they have that moment where they feel, and then it's like, okay, let's move out of this. Let's shift gears a little bit.
Yeah. And part of that, I think, is the responsibility they feel to keep good vibes in the environment that they're in.
Yes.
And part of it is because that feeling of discomfort is such a core thing to avoid for them. So it's like, I'm going to change so that mommy feels better, but I'm also going to change so that I feel better because I don't like feeling sad. And a lot of times for sevens, especially as they get older, it's like, the more we feel things and we reject it, the more we teach our bodies and our nervous systems that thing can't be handled. And so it's like crawling their way back into like, I can face myself and it's not going to kill me, right? I'm not going to be trapped in my emotional pain and discomfort, but it does feel like quicksand to a lot of sevens. Like if I even crack the door a little bit to pain and discomfort, I might just completely disappear and die. And that's so subconscious, right? It's not conscious in the moment when there's a serious conversation. They're like, well, anyway, back to this funny story. But like, that is kind of what it is. It's avoiding and like escaping that discomfort. And, that's beautiful in a way. Nobody can turn a situation around or find the silver lining like a 7 can. And if you're surrounded with people who are feeling hopeless and frustrated, like, geez, we need that. So it's just that balance again of, am I avoiding myself? Is this serving me? Is this ability to reframe things positively serving me and helping? Or is it sabotaging my growth or my ability to be honest with myself or other people?
That's good. I love that. Would you say that sevens sometimes embellish their stories, that they make them a little bit bigger
100%.
or add some more details?
100%. Yeah. Because it's all about like the entertainment. So it reminds me a lot of like stand-up comedians. I'm like, that story probably did happen, but it probably didn't happen like that because that's so funny or it's so witty or it's so clever. Like, I don't think it probably happened like that. So yes, which is tricky, right? Because it's like, when does that cross over to just a straight up lie?
Right, exactly.
So it's a little bit of a fine line for sevens at times to like, how do I be honest, but also create the energy or the experience I want to have and want to create for other people.
Yes.
It's tricky.
Well said. It is, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about 8s, our challengers. So 8s' communication style has been described as confident, sometimes maybe controlling, maybe a little bossy, very direct, and sometimes intimidating. So what would you add? What would you change?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yes to most of that. I was thinking about when we were talking about the 1s and 8s are probably the most direct because they feel so assured, right? A 3 can also be very direct, but it's a different motivation. 1s are so direct because it's the right thing. 8s are so direct because they're so assured that either it's the right thing or it's just straight up what they want. And it's like, this is what I'm saying. Whereas 3s will still want to be direct, but they're still so conscious of how other people feel about it. And so that's a dance for them. Whereas for 1s and 8s, it's like, I care a little bit less about what people think because I feel so committed to either me doing the right thing as a 1 or me sometimes getting what I want as an 8 and leading the way and being in charge. So they are direct. They tend to be very, their intention is to be very assertive and clear, right? It's like, I don't mean to offend people. I'm just saying what I need to say. Like, why are you offended? right? So eights
Yeah.
sometimes get pegged as being very insensitive, and sometimes, honestly, they are. Eights have a lot of work to do around growing and expanding their social awareness to how other people experience them. And um, I think on one hand, eights think like, I don't care though how people experience me in a way, right?
Yes.
But on the other hand, if you're in leadership, no one's following you if you're not caring about how you affect them. So that's a push and pull for eights where it's like, okay, let me think about how to hamburger this, right? It feels annoying to them in a way because they're like, we're just wasting time. Like, let me just say what I want to say, be clear, and move on. Like, that's better for all of us, right? And so it does feel frustrating to them to have to slow down, think it through, soften it, say it in a way that doesn't offend that person. It feels like wasted time for them.
Yes.
So I get it, and you know, they get frustrated with people who do beat around the bush or a little bit more passive, can be really enraging to them.
Yes.
So I would say because of that, even though their intention is to be just assertive and clear and like, let's move along, how other people often experience it is aggressive, confrontational. They experience their straightforwardness as, aggressive. And so sometimes it's unfortunate for unhealthy eights. Obviously, it's like, do you want to use your power for good or do you want to use it for bad? If you're using it for bad, then you are trying to bulldoze and manipulate and force people to do what you want. If you want to use your power
Right.
for good, it's more like inspiration and encouragement and using your power to say, hey, we're all powerful. Like, let's go. They don't have
Right.
the positive, like, motivational thing like sevens do in a way. Not that, I mean, eights can be very motivational. It's just different. Eights are like, let's crush this goal traditionally, where sevens are like, we can do it. Let's have fun and accomplish the goal. So it's the same thing, but the way that it's often presented or experienced in communication is very different. So, eights tend to, I will say, they do love a confrontation. They really respect people who can meet them with that level of intensity, who won't kind of, in their mind, cower to their intensity. They have a harder time trusting and respecting people who can't handle their intensity.
Well said.
But
Mhm.
sometimes, obviously, it can come off as combative much more than it comes off as
Sure.
collaborative. And so
Sure.
that's a dance for them for sure to
Absolutely.
maneuver their power.
Absolutely. Yes. I work with an eight, and anytime he adds a thanks to his email or to his chat, I'm like, oh, that was so nice.
Totally.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I
I
love
know.
that.
I will say, whenever we have a student who enrolls in Enneagram University, graduates, and then gives a great testimonial, I'm like, really? Like, all the other testimonials matter. And I'm so grateful that so many people have good experience with us. Like, I'm honored and our team is so grateful. But it's like, an eight doesn't blow smoke for the sake of blowing smoke. Like,
Right.
it's just not worth their
Right.
time. So, saying something that's pointed and that they give their time and effort to, they mean it, and it's really special. And so learning how to not be offended by them and how to speak their language, like your thanks is like a hug, whereas other
Yes.
people would be like,
Yes.
thank you, I can tell you put so much thought into this and I'm so grateful you're on our team. They're like, great, thanks.
Right.
But they really
Right.
are thankful.
Absolutely. Right. Right.
And on to the next
Exactly.
thing.
Absolutely. All right. Speaking of on to the next thing, let's round the circle here with our type nines, our peacemakers. Their communication style is sometimes described as very calm, patient, sometimes a little avoidant. So, what do you think about that? What would you add?
Yes, I was married to a nine for many, many years, and it is, nine. I think one of the reasons that I loved him for so long is that calmness, that peacefulness, that ability to just keep the temperature low and to be steady, right? There's not a lot of like emotionality often with nines, whereas fours, the emotionality is like, well, geez, you need to ask me how I am every hour because I just felt a lot of things and now I'm different than I was an hour ago. Whereas a nine is like, yeah, talk to you in 5 weeks. Like, I'll be the same, right? It's just the steadiness that is really wild. Like, sometimes I'm like, how do you do that? Teach me your ways. And other times I'm like, wake up. Like, where are you?
Mm-hmm.
So again,
Mm-hmm.
it's that ability to be calm, but for nines, often it goes so extreme that it's self-erasure. Like, it's almost like they don't exist. They're kind of like a hollow person. Like, there's a body there, but like, you're not here. And that can be really hard to connect to at times. So in communication, they do tend to be calm. They do tend to be, mediators is a word that is connected with nines a lot, which is true. They're good at it. They don't love it because it's conflict. Like they would rather have no conflict going on between anybody. Let's just all stay rational
Right.
here and calm, and we can solve
Yes.
any problem if we're on the same page and we're not increasing tensions or whatnot. So they prefer things to be very relaxed. Nines often, when I mention self erasure, it is almost like they'll be in a conversation and they'll just kind of go along with whatever other people are saying. And part of it could be, I don't really have an opinion, which is more common
Mhm.
than not. Whereas an eight is like, what's that like? Right. I don't have an opinion. But for nines, it's like, I don't have one. Or like, I didn't pause long enough to think of one. And it will take me a while to
Right.
think of it. And then I'll have to overcome my fear, especially if they're not in a group that they feel really safe in and that's really trusted. Then I have to overcome my fear and figure out, how do I assert myself and say the thing that I believe in, or the thing that I think we should do, or, what the choice should be. And so there is, again, that thing for a nine as well, where it's making sure that they're awake to themselves so that they can then exist in relationships. In communication, sometimes, the phrase that we use for their talk style is monotonous. And part of that is, nines will either kind of sit in the back and not engage at all, or sometimes they'll engage, but they haven't fully like thought through what they want to say. So they might just like ramble or meander a little. And it's kind of like they're trying to find their thoughts. So a lot of times more assertive, fast moving types, when they're listening to nines talk, it's like, oh my God, get to the point. Like, what are you saying? And there were times with my ex-husband where we would say, like, he would be like, yeah, what am I trying to say? I'm like, I don't know, but like, can you come back when you figure it out? Like, I just listened to you for 20 minutes and I don't know what the point of it was. Like we connected and I enjoyed the story, but we would just kind of laugh, like, what's happening? What's happening? So, or he would be like, okay, let me get to it, where it just kind of became a joke a little bit. But yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
that just kind of going on, like, oh, I'm not really sure what I'm trying to say, but like, let me go along.
Mhm.
So yeah, they tend to have a lack of clarity a little bit, kind of where sixes lack the clarity because there's so much thinking going on. Nines can lack the clarity because there's like a lack of thinking or consideration going on. Nines also tend to lack more confidence because confidence, one, takes a lot of energy, and two, it's like I have to be doing something to then build confidence in it. And so a lot of times for nines, it's like, it's fine. Whatever they decide is fine. Like, I'll just go along. It's like, if I really feel against it, and I feel safe here, I'll say something. But in general, like, it's fine. And sometimes that's self erasure and it's not connecting to themselves. And sometimes it's, I genuinely don't have a preference at all and I'm just happy to do whatever. So something
Yes.
that's their responsibility to figure out and then communicate to their people.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. I love what you said about nines not knowing what their opinion is and sometimes finding that, but then also finding the courage to assert themselves, overcoming that fear.
Multi-step
It
process.
reminds me, right, right. It reminds me of my friend Trey, who told me one time, if you press me for my opinion, I will give it to you, but it may not come out as nice as I want it to come out. And it may take me a lot of time, alternatively, to figure out what that is. So just please be patient with
Yes.
me. And I think that is so helpful if we know to give the nine that time to
Yes,
process.
for sure. And I think
So,
it's important that other types don't look at that as a deficit on their end. You're not dumber
yeah.
because you don't think on your toes as fast as me, right? If I'm looking at our assertive types, which are three, sevens, and nines, you guys are fast action takers, but that also means you're a little impulsive, right? So like good and pros and cons. Whereas nines, it's like I need space to like process this and figure out. Then I'll come back ready. So having that and not judging that or thinking like, oh, they take forever, or I wish they could just decide. It's like they need to hurry up as much as you need to slow down. And so, like,
Hmm.
there's got to be a
Yeah.
negotiation there for the respect of just how our brains function differently. And it's not a deficit on either way. But a lot of times, especially in the
Yes.
workplace, fast action is rewarded and that thoughtfulness isn't. And so it's
Yeah.
a balance for sure. Like, no, you cannot have 2 weeks to make a decision, but I also am not going to force you to make it in the next 5 minutes, right? Like, let's schedule a meeting for Thursday and touch base and decide then, so
Exactly.
yeah.
Yes. This is so good, so helpful. I want to end with this question for those who are watching or listening. Why does knowing your communication style or your talk style? Why does that matter in a work setting?
Oh my gosh, I feel like why doesn't, in what capacity and way does it not matter? It is everything. The entire point of like, we're all relating with people, whether they're our clients, our customers, our coworkers, our bosses. Like, we don't exist outside of relationships. And learning a second language is really interesting because I was feeling insecure. Like, I know that I'm not saying things perfectly, right? Like, I can get by, I was telling you, but I'm not fluid yet. I will be someday. But
Yeah.
I was feeling really insecure that I'm not like speaking well the way that I want, right, to my standard. And somebody said to me, it might have been my old Spanish teacher, she said, the point of language is just to communicate. So if you're getting your point across, that's the point. Like, you don't have to say your sentence grammatically perfectly for you to get your point across. And so I have really carried that with me. And so I think when it comes to the Enneagram, our communication styles, it's our language. And so every day when
Yeah.
we go into a workplace, I'm interacting through my language. I'm speaking my language, and all of them are speaking their language, and they're not the same. And so we have to then figure out, like, we don't speak the same lingo. Like, our words are different, or our vibes are different, or how we go about communicating is different. Even if we're all speaking English, the way that we do it is still different because of our type. And so how do we expand ourselves to be more, when I think about an actual different language, culturally sensitive and culturally aware and accommodating? And then with our personality types with the same language, how do we create more space to let people be who they are? And how do I try to learn their language a little bit? And how can they try to learn my language a little bit so that we can work this more smoothly? I've said it before. It's like very well known, I think, in the leadership and professional development world, that people don't leave jobs, they leave managers, they leave toxic work environments. And so not knowing how to communicate is the number one way that work environments get toxic. And so learning how to speak each other's language is literally everything. Like, what is more valuable than that? And so, yeah, so critical.
Yes, yes. I could not have said that better myself. So beautifully said, Kristi.
Yes,
Thank
of
you.
course.
All right. Well, thank you so much for
Yeah.
your time. Thank you for your wisdom. As people are listening or watching, they are going to fall in love with you. I know that they
Yes.
will. And they're going to say, how do I get more of
Yeah.
Kristi? What do I need to do? How can I find her? So if they're looking for more information and they want to connect with
Yeah.
you, how would they do
Yeah,
that?
I would love to meet you. I'm a people person, if it's not clear, as a six. And I just, yeah, for me, I think being raised by a type 2 mom, and also, having some two in me a little bit, I think because of that, it's like people are the whole point. If,
Yeah.
if we're here for any purpose, is it not to care for each other, and love each other well? So anyway, I love all the people. So I run, as I've mentioned a few times, Enneagram University. We certify and train coaches, leaders all around the world, whether they want to build their own coaching and consulting practice, whether they work at an organization and just want to integrate it into what they do, whether they're a therapist like myself and my own background and want to integrate the Enneagram into their therapeutic work. It's just really fun. So yeah, you can find me at theenneagramuniversity.com. We have a free preview of the course if you want to check it out. I know sometimes people are like, what? I didn't even know Enneagram coaching was a thing, which is normal. So really what it is just training you really deeply on this tool and how to integrate it into your everyday life, whether it's work, personal, whatever. It's a really fun, beautiful community of people who just deeply love people, love to nerd out about the Enneagram, and feel responsible and excited about impacting their communities in a way
Yeah.
that's meaningful with this tool that they really love. So yeah, you can find us there. You can find us on Instagram as well. And you're welcome to email me directly if you want, which is Kristi at theenneagramuniversity.com. But yeah, I would love to meet folks. I'm around and would be honored to have anybody check out our program and just see if maybe it's for you. And yeah, I run free consults as well. So sometimes people are like, I don't even have a clue if this is possible. Does it make sense? What does it even mean? Could it work in my industry? And so I do a lot of consult calls with folks to just kind of talk it out. And we're very committed to, like, if we're not a fit for you, I'm going to tell you, because I don't want you to come through if you're not going to be happy. Like, that's not a win for me.
Yes.
That smells like bad reviews, and I don't want those. Like, I only want folks who really it aligns. And so, yeah, I'll be very honest with people in consults if it makes sense for them or not. So, and worst case scenario, we just have a great conversation. We nerd out about the Enneagram and you make a new friend from South America, and wherever you are in the world. So, in best case scenario, you get to go through a program that's really empowering and exciting and fun and develops you professionally in a way that you believe in, and that matters.
I love it. That's great,
Yeah.
Kristi.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having me. It's been an honor.
Go connect with Kristi. Now you know how. And thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.